Welcome to Real Money Talks, how to make money, manage money, and invest money. Your Real Money Talks host, Laurel Langmeyer, gets straight to the point about what it actually takes to make money and build lasting wealth in today's changing economic climate. If you're ready to get the financial results you've always dreamed of, keep listening. Real Money Talks is the right place for you. And now here's your host, Laurel Langmeyer.
Hi, this is Laurel, and welcome back to Laurel's Real Money Talks. I'm excited to be with you today and talk about a subject that I think causes people extraordinary pain, and that's how do you go into business with a friend or a partner? And the first thing I want to do in that topic is pull it apart. So going into business with a friend, I think, is way more complex and emotional than going into business with a partner. So I would just really challenge why. And the first thing I think you got to look at in any deal are the skill sets of the team. So what does each person bring to the party? So get a pen and paper, and we're going to have that conversation today. We're going to talk about, how do you choose a partner? And whether you're bringing the deal or they're bringing the deal, how do you pick that team is how I want you thinking about it. What are the terms of that deal? How do you exit those deals? I always say, how do you design your business divorce while you're in love? So get a pen and paper, and let's get started. And I'm going to be making a product out of this conversation because I think there needs to be some checklists and some, thorough thinking before people just jump into business. I see it happen all the time. And women, you are the worst. I always say, God put me here in a woman's body to kick you women in the rear a little bit and shape you up, because business is less than 50 years old for most women. Men did it forever and ever and ever. And women have a different collaborative style, a different emotional approach, a different need and goal a lot of times. And it's taken me years, decades to really, I shouldn't say shift my approach, but to really just treat business like business, And a lot of you women have hobbies, and I'm not making you wrong. I'm just saying, what's the intent? What's the intent of this joint venture, call it the business, the partnership? What are you doing and what's the outcome? So being really clear on that, and then knowing who brings, what to the party. So let's start with kind of the breakdown. How do you get in? What are some things you can do during the relationship to manage and keep it healthy? And what are some different things to think about in the beginning to create a really great exit and an ending? Because all of these deals have an ending. And too many people walk in Pollyanna saying, oh, we're just going to be together forever. No, you're not. And so when you really have a serious conversation and scope it properly, I find the relationships last much, much longer. At any time, again, in any of our conversations, go to asklaurel.com, give me your name, phone number, and email, and ask for an appointment, ask me any question. We will get back to you right away. So let's start this off. So what's the point of the deal, right? Is it a short-term deal? And I'm going to kind of break that down because some businesses are actually, I'm getting into some new ones right now, and they're actually very busy. They're daily active businesses. So I know, just given my other commitments, the amount of time or not that I can give to that level of a daily active business. So is it a daily active business? How much is required in totality? Not only just from you, but from the partners or even hired staff. Is it more of a passive investment? I do a lot of real estate notes and flips, and I'm typically the money and the creative ideas and input and accounting and legal, but I'm not the one working in the streets doing the deal. So I think you got to look at how much is required. And then the smartest thing to do is, who do you need? Unemotionally look at the business or the joint venture, the project, and say unemotional to the players having the conversation. What is the skill set that is needed and most likely to create success from this opportunity? So do you need a copywriter? Do you need a graphic designer? Do you need a rehabber? Do you need a contractor? Do you need, a lawyer? Do you need an accountant? Who do you really need if you have an ideal team? And speak from that perspective. So without names, because a lot of times what happens is that you'll be designing the business and forcing roles that are necessary by the people sitting around the table. And sometimes, I think in a mature business situation, some of the people around the table need to say, I'm not really needed on this team. Yeah, I'd like to be on this team, but I'm not really needed on this team. And maybe they take a role then as an advisor if they have any input to it. Maybe they take a role of an investor or finding money, or maybe they bow out. So I think that's the beginning of all the relationships is who's really necessary, needed. I'm sure there's a lot of emotional, especially with women, you tend to do this emotional, be such a good girlfriend project. And those tend to not work out. While I'm speaking about that too, I see, even if they're a friend going into a relationship like this, there is a different hat they wear called a business partner in this relationship that you define. And I think when you are with mature people who can wear different hats, and not collapse the hats. So, if you really want to go into business with a friend, which I'm not a huge fan of that, and I've seen it done successfully, more with men than with women, then be very clear which hat you're wearing. So, today, I have some great men business partners. Like today, we're just, going to go ski. There's no business conversation. We're going out for a nice dinner. There's no business conversation. And that there's really times and places for those meetings, and it's not all collapsed. The more collapsed your relationships are, the worse this is all going to get. So I would have that conversation is, can you uncollapse the relationships and hold them independently and wholly in what you agreed to do? So all that being said, that sounds easy. And there's a lot of work to that. So one of the things that I always design, and I even do this with husband and wife teams, when I'm working with them, is I want you to just go independently, not as a group, independently, and write out kind of the background of what I just spoke of. In an ideal world, who would be the players? What makes what they're bringing to the business appropriate? Typically what a deal requires, or any sort of a project, it requires the brains, the expertise to do it. It requires time of somebody to do the actual work. It requires investor dollars, potentially. It requires some sales experience by somebody, for sure, no matter what the business is, and some operational background. So I want you to go independently and design who should be on the team, what would be the roles, how would they be compensated, and what do you think is fair from where you sit? And then everybody come together with that is one of my first homework assignments. And it's vastly shocking how different all those opinions are, because you have to do your own thinking. You can't lean into the group thinking. And then that at least begins a discussion of how far off you are. And it also clarifies the project or the business. How did you think you were going to run it? How did you think it was going to get funded? Who was going to be doing the work? And one of the biggest role descriptions that has to be solved, and I've had some breakdowns in past relationships because of this, is how people get paid. Because whoever sells, whoever brings the lead and the money to the business will always get paid more. Who brings the lead and the money to the business will always be paid more. So I think it's really critical for those roles, and then how people get paid. And then I'm going to go on to the next big category is if you are raising capital, which is more of a completely enhanced conversation from this one. I'm in the middle of doing that right now. But what does money get? What do the investors get? What kind of shares? What kind of votes? What kind of duration? Are they on a convertible note, or just a note in general and they're taken out in 3 years? How do the investors get paid back? How does the money get used? I mean, that's a whole podcast, or 3 or 4 or 5 all by itself, is how do you put a project together where you do need to raise capital? So I'm talking more just more simple businesses might lead to little capital, but not a big money raise in this whole conversation. So what are the roles? How do they get paid? Big conversation. And then how do you operationalize it? So obviously you're going to need some sort of an entity, an LLC, as typically across the nation, limited proprietaries or just general, corporations in other countries. And what are the operating agreement? So inside the operating agreement, you're going to be having conversations and actually writing down what are the roles, how do people get paid, how do the investors get paid, what's going to be the use of funds, what's the sales plan, what's the marketing plan, is there going to be buy-sell agreements? So if a partner wants out, typically a way that, has been employed many times is a buy-sell agreement for first right of refusal, that the core owners and those who get to vote get the first right of refusal to buy back those shares? Are those shares done on what kind of evaluation of the dollar amount of those shares is going to be required? All this has to be pre-thought of before you go into the relationship. Who's going to own the database? Who's going to own the URL? In real estate, I love real estate rentals, and how many, clients that I've coached around who gets the post office box. Why? Because that's where the rent checks go. Very, very, very important that that's where the rent checks go, and that's where the money goes. So whoever has the key can command more of the cash. And some of you listening might say, these are kind of ridiculous, like really, like this is how you're thinking of stuff. These are things that I have seen relationships fall apart upon. Is you took the database because you were more technical. You took the post office key and you're withholding all the rents. Expenses. How are you going to pay for expenses? I'm a huge fan of you personally not owning a business in your own name, that one of your other companies, a management company, marketing company, one of your other companies will own the shares of your company, of that next one, and that you're personally out of it. Because then in your own personal business, you can do your own personal expenses. What I find with people who are pretty new to business is they think all of a sudden all their expenses are going to be paid for by the business. And in more mature operations, everybody kind of handles their own, and the business functions by itself. So very different thinking, more mature thinking, smarter thinking. The big one that has to be in the operating agreement is, how will you have a business divorce? So how do you have a business divorce while you're in love? And the reason I say while you're in love is I want it to be done on the front end. So what are you wanting to do with this business? Are you wanting to cash flow it? Are there certain parties that want to get out? Are there certain parties that want to stay in? Like, how do you want this to go? Do you want to just build it and sell it? Is there somebody in the company that wants to acquire it solely? As you're hearing through all of this checklist, it's the best thinking is done on the beginning. Now, a lot of times you'll say, well, the best thinking, you don't know enough, right? And I've had a massive, expensive experience of, allowing too much time to go on before the agreement was done, and too much, information had been transferred, and makes the knowledge of the people who have the knowledge or the intellectual property or some sort of an invention or patent, it allows them to have a lesser leveraged position. So I would encourage you to get it done, to get it papered, to get it really clear, and have your own attorneys. Here's another big one. Boy, I could go on this one for a long time. This whole conversation, because there's so many I've done. I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of partnerships, and what made them work and what didn't make them work, and what caused them to fall down and what kept them strong. And each of you having your own team, your own lawyer team coming into the deal, I think is absolutely essential. So having one group lawyer typically does not work, although the one group lawyer would stand for the company. And then individually, you'd have to get your own lawyers. And you really need to have everything that you're doing, clearly reviewed and handled up front. Couple inside operational issues, things to think about is who's going to be doing the accounting. Is there going to be a third party? What technology you're going to use? Which software systems are you going to use? Who has access? Who has administrative controls? Whose name is the URLs and the merchant service accounts and all of that in. And I know that sounds really, for some of you that are more sophisticated, you're like, of course I know all this. I know. So for you that are more sophisticated, I hope this is just some great reminders. And for a lot of people that have been in business for a while, a lot of little things get missed. So this is me just going through a list to have you really think thoroughly about going into business. And one last piece that I want to just point to, and one of my greatest mentors told me this, is never give equity to what you can hire. Never give equity to what you can hire, which means, this whole Shark Tank phenomenon has really raised the level of bringing a shark on your team. And I've been sharking since before Shark Tank even, hit the TV airways. And they make it look at some level easier than it is. And there's a lot of detail that isn't discussed on the show because it's an entertainment, structure, not an educational structure. I mean, there's some education in it, but it's very entertainment oriented, as all TV is. But, bringing a shark onto your team and bringing in investors may be necessary, but the truth is they're expensive to get out. And did you need them to do it? And there's a lot of smaller businesses where you can go down to the bank and get a 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5, 6% note. There are, SBAs, BDCs, all sorts of places that give loans to small businesses, much cheaper money, and you don't have to do the dilution or the exit clause to try to get an investor out, or, the vernacular of a shark out. So I know having a shark in your tank sounds like super sexy, but the truth is it can actually become more volatile and more stressful. Again, just go into that conversation very openly and aware and get some advice. Have someone that actually knows how to look at your financials and your numbers, give you advice to whether that's a smart move or not. I find a lot of times that if somebody thinks they need $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, that's not hard money to go find when you're around smart money. So before you go give a chunk of equity, like I have a woman in Canada, oh my gosh, for $200,000, which she could have just made herself consulting or selling her product, pre-selling her product. She could have made the money in less than a month, maybe 2 months. She gave a huge chunk of equity for $200,000. Now these guys have a big voice. They're kind of bossing her around. I see it all the time. I see really inappropriate business relationships and the money getting distorted upon like a desperate need. So don't get desperate. There's always money. There's always around. You just have to have the right plan, the right team, the right mentor, the right coach to guide you through the process, and a really smart business lawyer. Not just any lawyer, really smart business lawyer. So a lot of facets to it, a lot of checklists to it. And if you want any help with this, I love helping, can do some just-in-time coaching. Again, go to asklaurel.com. Give me your name, phone number, and email. Ask a question, ask for an appointment, and let's stay together in this amazing conversation of how do you get a proper joint venture or business deal done. This is Laurel signing off on Laurel's RealMoneyTalk.com. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining Laurel for this segment of Real Money Talks, how to make money, manage money, and invest money. To continue this new conversation and to find free resources to support your wealth creation, visit asklaurel.com/podcast gifts. That's ASKLORAL.com/podcast gifts. Thanks for listening and join us again soon. New episodes are released every week.